Next on Unsolved Mysteries. Two Army buddies are found dead, both hung by the neck. The Army says suicide. Their families say murder. He's charming, intelligent, suave. And he's left four women both heartbroken and broken. At this lonely intersection in Nebraska, a young man and woman vanish into thin air. What could have possibly happened? And finally, a young woman breaks up with her possessive boyfriend. She ends up dead, and she may not be the only victim. These are stories that are guaranteed to surprise you. I'm Dennis Farina, and for the next hour, it's Unsolved Mysteries. The National Cemetery in Little Rock, Arkansas, is the final resting place for hundreds of soldiers, sailors, and pilots. Two men buried here are at the center of a mystery that has no easy answers. The Army says that both men killed themselves, but their families say that the Army is dead wrong.
Mike didn't have nothing to die for, no more than Billy had to die for. Neither one of them committed suicide. They didn't do it.
Billy Ray Hargrove and Mike Carmichael led similar lives. Both had planned careers in the military since they were kids. Both joined the Army in their teens, and both married Korean women while stationed in the Far East. They became best buddies as they climbed through the ranks. During Operation Desert Storm, Billy and his outfit were sent to Saudi Arabia. However, the conflict ended before their platoon saw any action.
We're wondering when you'd recommend us for the Desert Storm decoration.
Billy Ray, I appreciate everything you and the men did during the campaign.
When Billy finished Desert Storm, he was disappointed because his men did not get a merit award, a medal that he felt like they deserved. And he set about trying to get the medal for them, and every direction he went in, he couldn't accomplish it.
Sir, I understand your point, but the men were just
I've decided to refuse the application.
Billy just could not accept the Army's decision, and he made a questionable decision of his own.
Yes, sir.
He forged his superior's signature on the appropriate documents. A short time later, his men received their medals. A few months later, he arrived in Korea for another tour of duty.
Sergeant Hargrove?
Yes, sir.
I'm here to place you under arrest for treason. Willis, remove the Desert Storm commendation.
Sir, what's this about?
Billy Ray called me January the 28th and told me, Dad, I think I'm going to get out of the military. I've had all of it I can stand. And he said, I'll probably be home by June.
Billy's court-martial was not his only problem. His marriage was falling apart.
I had visited their house, and they were fighting a lot, and there was a lot of jealousy. She was constantly accusing him of having a girlfriend and having a child somewhere that she didn't know anything about, and it wasn't true at all.
Hey, Hargrove!
Then one morning, Billy missed a summons to report to duty.
Hey, Billy, where you been?
Oh, just having breakfast.
Oh, did you not hear the siren?
No. Are we having a drill?
Yeah, and the captain's going ballistic.
Oh, but he is. Tell him I'm on my way.
Okay, good deal. See you later.
Billy never did report for duty. Instead, he took his dog for a walk. 20 minutes later, Billy's wife heard the dog barking.
What's wrong with you, huh? Where's Bill? Huh? Where's Bill?
She found Billy hanging inches from the ground by an elastic parachute string. A suicide note was found in his pants pocket. It read in part,
My life is really screwed up now, and I just don't know how to fix it. I've been thinking a lot about taking my life for a long time now.
I looked at the writing, and I did not believe it was his writing. It did not look to me like his writing.
The Army acknowledged that the suicide note might not have been in Billy's handwriting. Even so, they ruled his death a suicide. They concluded that he had been depressed about his upcoming court-martial and his divorce.
He was not the type person to commit suicide, no matter what, especially putting a rope around his neck. I just could not believe it, and I still don't believe it. Something happened to him, but he did not commit suicide.
The autopsy report also contained evidence that it might not be suicide. Billy had cuts and abrasions on his face, hands, and knuckles.
That would indicate to me that someone had been in a fight, but the military in their report didn't question anyone or ask where the scratches come from. They just ignored them.
When Billy Ray Hargrove was laid to rest, one of the mourners at his funeral was his friend, Mike Carmichael.
I do know that there was one part of the scripture.
And when I finally did meet Mike, it was at Billy's funeral, when he brought Billy's body back home.
Fear no evil, for thou art.
And he told me, he said, Harv said, we'll give them hell. We're going to make them pay, the SOBs, pay for what they done.
After the service, Mike returned to the Hargroves' house with Billy's family.
He looked at me and he promised, and he told me if it was the last thing he ever did, he was going to find out what happened to Billy Ray.
Just don't do anything until you hear from him.
But 6 weeks later, Mike would also be dead. Mike's uncle Oscar served in the Marines for 20 years. He is now suffering from emphysema, but in our interview, said that Mike believed there was a larger conspiracy involved.
There had been 3 other Army personnel there in Korea that had supposedly committed suicide. And my nephew told his birth mother, says, don't be surprised if I'm not next.
Mike Carmichael returned to Korea and began his own investigation. He and his wife, Sun Hee, visited Billy Ray's widow and collected his personal papers. Included was a letter Billy wrote to his father a few days before the hanging. But that letter never made it home.
For some reason, Kim, his dad didn't
He
get
was
the
supposed to have written me a letter in February. I don't know when, but he was supposed to have written me a letter. And I'm sure if I could find that letter, it would explain everything.
Mike continued to collect Billy's papers and stored them with his own papers in a metal box. Mike told his uncle Oscar that if anything happened to him, Oscar should immediately open the box. But Mike never said what was in it.
I'll see you at the club tomorrow night, all right?
Then on Mike Carmichael's 38th birthday, he received an unexpected phone call ordering him back to the base. By the next morning, Mike had still not returned home.
On Sunday morning, I called the Army base to find out where my husband was. I talked to a security guard. I was told that he did not see my husband. So I asked him to try to knock on the door of his barracks room. He said that there was no response and the door was locked.
An hour later, Sun Hee found Mike Carmichael's body in his barracks office. He was hanging by a parachute cord and leaning oddly positioned against his locker. Like Billy, he had abrasions on his face and a gash on his forehead. He had been dead for several hours. The Army's investigation concluded that Mike Carmichael had taken his own life because he was depressed over financial matters and Billy's death.
There was no way that Mike would take his life and take the chicken way out. He was happier than I had seen him in a long time, due to the fact that him and Sonny had just gotten married in July. They was just like a couple of overgrown kids, really. And he had his retirement to look forward to. I think he was angry, and I think he was going to direct his anger towards finding out the reason why or who caused his friend or killed his friend.
The Carmichael and Hargrove families absolutely refused to believe the deaths were suicides. They launched a letter-writing campaign asking for the official reports from the military. Unsatisfied with the Army's response, they contacted the office of U.S. Congressman J. Dickey.
Even the reports that I could get were lacking in the photos of the crime scene. Other things were withheld or whited out for certain reasons. And after looking at it, I don't think that they took into account all of the different aspects of the case, and they maybe kind of just closed the door without a thorough investigation.
I think the signs are there that there is a cover-up of some sort, and I don't want to accuse anything or anybody at this time of that, but the reason why there would be a cover-up, I don't know. That's one of the things we want to find out. I happen to think that if we open this thing up, that we will find an answer.
The two families are especially troubled by the many similarities of the two deaths. Both Billy and Mike died just after they were summoned to the Army barracks. Both were tied with parachute cord. Both had cuts and abrasions on their faces and hands. And both men were found hanging just inches from the ground.
The question marks that come up about Sergeant Carmichael start with the fact that he's in a sitting position some 3 inches from the floor. Even the natural instincts of a person would have your hands falling down or pushing against it. There's not any way that our rights, our self-preservation rights are such that we'll do something like that.
This is the official crime scene sketch from the U.S. military investigation. Noted in the drawing was the metal box that contained Mike and Billy's personal papers. It was sitting on a desk across the room from Mike's body. The box of letters later disappeared. No one knows what happened to it, and military personnel deny its existence. The men's families suspect a cover-up.
I believe in Billy Ray's case and in Mike's case too, something had to be going on that wasn't right, something that they found out about or knew about or maybe was going to expose, and they were gotten rid of.
A congressional hearing upheld the Army's finding of suicide. They found that Mike had choked himself with a rope while sitting on the ground. Billy's mother says the hearing was just a formality, put on for show. She insists the two buddies were murdered. If you have any information that could shed some light on this case, please log on to our website at unsolved.com. Next, a con man uses investment schemes, a phony identity, and the art of seduction to trap his female victims. You're about to meet a successful, highly intelligent businesswoman who never imagined that she could have been duped by a con man. But guess what? She was. In fact, she turned over her entire life savings to him, and she was not the only one. The woman, who we'll call Catherine, was at a singles party when she was approached by a well-dressed man who spoke with a German accent. He introduced himself as Eric Kessler.
No, I was born in Hamburg.
Oh, Germany.
Yeah.
The night I first met Eric Kessler, he presented himself as a businessman who was in town on business and would be staying for probably a year.
Some business associates have asked me to look at some property here.
I was impressed on his dress, his mannerism. I never got an impression that he was even attempting to make a pass.
And what do you do here? You work?
Yes.
Eric encouraged Catherine to reveal intimate personal details about her life. She told him she was divorced, that she operated a hair salon, and that she was worried about being able to put her children through college.
It's such a coincidence that we should meet. I'm talking with some friends of mine from Western Europe.
Eric just happened to have a solution. He told her about an invention which would revolutionize Catherine's industry.
Well, I'd like to hear about that. What area of the business is it?
Well, it's very complex and very technical.
He arranged for her to see the image system known as the video makeover. It was cutting-edge technology that let clients see how they would look with different hairstyles and colors.
I thought that the concept was fantastic. You could charge a large amount of money for it.
Kessler convinced Catherine that he could place the system in a major Midwest department store chain, but they needed money to get started.
It's called a video makeover.
She got a $50,000 loan from a wealthy friend. Eric said he would repay the loan 4 months later.
She did not ask a lot of questions because she believed in me. She wrote a check for $50,000.
Oh, you're terrific. Thank you.
Kessler insisted that a business account be established in Catherine's name. Only she could make deposits and withdrawals. A few days later, he moved into Catherine's basement so they could work more closely together.
We brought in another telephone line, which was strictly a business line. At one point in time, my son took the message from the department store saying they wanted to set up a meeting with Eric Kessler. He was very convincing.
Before long, Eric began to romance his new partner.
When Eric Kessler came into my life, it never occurred to me that the man was a con artist because I certainly assumed that I would recognize that. I have dealt with people who have attempted to con me or take me in business matters. The fact that Eric also made me feel that he was in love with me also put me off guard.
3 weeks later, Eric's conquest was complete. He surprised Catherine with a special gift.
Eric,
I have a gift for you.
what in the world have you done?
One day when I came home from work, there was a king-size bed in my bedroom. And he had made the decision that it would be much easier if he could have the office downstairs and didn't have to use it also as a bedroom. And his way of doing that was to bring in a king-size bed.
Do you like it?
I love it.
Good.
Thank you.
Kessler started controlling every part of Catherine's life.
It makes you feel good.
Yes.
It makes you feel confident.
Decisions about wardrobe, makeup, jewelry, they were all made by Kessler.
And we are confident people.
I did get to the point that I was not confident. I mean, I wouldn't have bought a pair of earrings at that point because I didn't think that I was capable of doing it anymore.
On a 24-month closed-end lease agreement,
Eric even convinced Catherine to lease a high-priced Cadillac with all of the options.
Erica, I don't think this is a good idea. I don't think we have $500 a month to spend on
My
this.
dear, this is a taxable deduction. Why can't you make an intelligent business decision?
Then, Kessler started asking Catherine for large cash advances.
We have accountants, we have business managers, we have lawyers, we have tax consultants.
He claimed some of their suppliers would not accept checks. When the loan money ran out, Eric convinced Catherine to put $20,000 more of her own money into the business. And that's when the truth finally began to dawn on Catherine.
I didn't know who I was more angry with, myself or Eric. All we had done is spent money. It had not been spent wisely. Here I am as a businesswoman, and I have blown it. I mentioned to him that I thought that he was a con man, and I had thought about going to the police. He said, "What good would it do you? You got the money. You signed all of the checks. You agreed to all of the decisions that were made. There is nothing that ties me in. It is your word against mine.
We have to talk.
Eric moved out of Catherine's apartment. The day he was supposed to repay the loan, she met him at a bar to ask for the money.
Account.
I have a check coming by special courier tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for $50,000.
And if they don't come, what then?
It will be here, and you will write a check.
Emotionally, I was exhausted. I wanted to believe that I was going to get money. Down deep, I didn't believe it, but that was the only thing I had left. I had to hope that the check was going to be there. I met my benefactor that night. I wrote the check. I was very hesitant if it all was going to come through.
Hello?
I've got to talk to Eric Kessler. Where is he?
I don't know. Who is this?
This is Andy down at Irishman's Pub. He bounced a check in here last night for $1,000, and I want to know where...
When the bartender called me the next morning, I knew right then and there it was all over.
Catherine lost more than $75,000. She was unable to pay back her benefactor, and she was forced into bankruptcy. Update. After the broadcast, a viewer called us to report that Eric Kessler's real name was Edward C. Maynard and that he was staying at a motel in Houston, Texas. The FBI closed in and arrested Maynard on charges of forgery and theft by fraud. But Maynard posted bail and then skipped his court hearing. When we reran the story, a viewer in Michigan recognized Maynard. She contacted the police and he was arrested again. This time, Edward C. Maynard ended up serving 5 years in prison. Next, a man stalks, then kills his ex-girlfriend. Police believe he's killed before and could kill again. Elgin, Illinois. Michael Alfonso has reached a breaking point. He's desperate. His girlfriend, a single mother, Josefina Gonzalez, is leaving him. He asks for one last chance, but she won't relent, and he can't handle it.
No!
Alfonso stabs her and tries to escape with Josefina's 2-year-old child. Although severely wounded, Josefina fights back. Michael Alfonso drops the child and runs into the night. Josefina Gonzalez and her son recovered from that attack. Michael Alfonso was arrested and served 4 years in prison. But then Alfonso was released, and he began looking for another relationship. When Hannah Velasquez separated from her husband, she worked hard to support her young daughter. Michael Alfonso was a co-worker at one of her jobs.
You scared me.
I came in here just to ask you out to dinner.
Tonight?
Yeah, tonight.
Okay.
Hannah was not interested in a serious relationship. She had enough to deal with.
She didn't talk about any relationship with him, but she always said, I'm alive right now, I gotta do what I can right now. And she also wanted a good future for her and for her daughter.
Hannah's second job was at a local fast food restaurant. She had told a co-worker that she was having a hard time working things out with her former husband.
Hannah was having marriage problems. I said, you just got to communicate with each other. And then about a few days later, Hannah starts getting these phone calls at work.
Hannah, for you. Hello? Yeah, we're busy right now.
And this man starts calling like every other day there.
Yeah, okay.
Then I asked her, I says, who is this man calling you at work? And she would not answer me.
No.
She would not tell me.
Sure. Yeah, we're just friends. Everything's fine.
She said, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. I said, okay then, fine.
Apparently, Alfonso had become more than just a co-worker. But Renee Anderson was right to be worried.
My husband and I are getting back together. Me
With
and my
who?
husband. We are
What does that mean? That means you're leaving me? No, you're not.
Eventually, Hannah decided to go back to her husband.
Michael Alfonso is an aggressive, violent man. When he doesn't get his way, he gets angry. Many of his friends tell us that they're scared of him, that they don't know which way he's going to turn because he's so unpredictable.
Hannah, I'm talking to you.
Do you want to hear?
Did you hear me? Hannah, you want to listen to me? Okay, that's nothing. You're not going anywhere. You don't break up with me, or I hurt you and your family.
Hannah was so scared that she notified authorities.
She did not want to pursue any criminal charges at the time because she was deathly afraid of retaliation by Michael Alfonso.
No, you can't talk to him. Then I know he's gonna do something.
One day, Alfonso showed up at the restaurant where Hannah worked.
I told you it's over between us.
According to what one customer told me, some man comes up to her and they start arguing. And it was a very heated argument from what the customer told me.
Hannah's husband, who worked at the same restaurant, was taking a break in his car on the other side of the building. He had no idea his wife was in danger.
You're back on me. You're not leaving me. You'll regret this.
One of the witnesses was in an automobile waiting in the drive-through line for food. Michael walked directly at her vehicle and walked between her car and the drive-through, and she looked at his face and noticed that he had a smirk on his face. There was a person that noticed a black Firebird type of a vehicle drive away at a high rate of speed. We know from records that Michael Alfonso owns a 1994 black-colored Pontiac Firebird.
I'm holding Hannah, and I said to her, "Hold on, Hannah, hold on. Everything's going to be okay."
28-year-old Hannah Velasquez was pronounced dead shortly after being taken to a hospital. An all-points bulletin went out for the arrest of Michael Alfonso. Police would soon learn that they were now looking for a career criminal. Before Alfonso's 4-year prison term for the attack on Josefina Gonzalez, he had served time for rape. Authorities also suspected Alfonso in the disappearance of Sumanir Yang. She vanished after telling Alfonso that she wanted to go back to her husband. 2 months later, Sumanir Yang's body was discovered in a remote area. She had been shot once in the head.
A pretty clear pattern of Michael Alfonso's behavior has emerged here. It seems as though when he begins to date a woman and the relationship goes sour, he gets angry at the woman and does not want them to leave. And what he does is he reacts with violence.
No.
Any woman that he gets involved in a relationship with is in grave danger. Unless they accede to all his demands and remain his loyal servant, they are in danger of being raped or killed.
Update. Over 2,000 miles from Elgin, Illinois, in Veracruz, Mexico, Michael Alfonso was arrested. After 3 years on the run, he was deported to the United States. To avoid the death penalty, Alfonso pleaded guilty to the murders of both Hannah Velasquez and Sumanir Yang. He was sentenced to 3 life terms without the possibility of parole. Next, an explosion blasts the church into smithereens. How did the church choir manage to escape a fiery death? Beatrice, Nebraska, 1950. This is an area where people take their religion very seriously. If you wanted to sing in the choir of the West End Baptist Church, you showed up no later than 7:25 p.m. Choir director Martha Paul made sure of it.
No one was ever really late. There might have been very, very few circumstances, but most often everyone was there all the time. I really can't think of a time that anyone came late.
Very nice. See you Sunday and next week at 7:15.
That rehearsal would be their last in the West End Church. On March 1st at 7:27 p.m., exactly 2 minutes after the choir was to meet, something happened that nobody can explain. That is, of course, unless you believe in miracles. The afternoon of March 1st turned bitter cold. The church's pastor stopped by at 4:30 to light the furnace so the church would be warm in time for the evening's choir practice. The Reverend and his wife always brought their 18-month-old daughter with them to choir practice. But that night, the baby stained her dress, and Mrs. Klemple had to iron another one. It was 7:15, and they were running late. At about that same time, Martha Paul's teenage daughter, Marilyn, was sound asleep.
I was very tired, and I wanted to rest for a very short period of time before going to the church to practice. So I decided that maybe a little 15-minute nap wouldn't hurt, and it ended up being a little bit longer, probably about a half an hour.
A few blocks away, Herbert Kipf was working on church business.
I know, I just need to finish this by tonight.
That night I was writing a letter to our denominational headquarters, and it seemed very important for me to get it into the mail that evening. My mother was hounding me to get going because the time was late already, but I felt it was more important to get it in the mail and drop it on the way to church.
18-year-old Lucille Jones let herself get hooked on a radio show that night. Lucille was supposed to pick up another choir member, but tonight she didn't care.
I turned on the radio to listen to This Is Your Life. I don't know why I turned it on that night, but I turned it on. They said this was going to be Edgar Bergen's life, and I just decided I was going to listen to it.
At 7:23, LaDonna Vandergrift was struggling with geometry. She was determined to find the answer before leaving. But the problem was difficult, and LaDonna was running late. 2 miles away, Rowena Estes couldn't start her car. She was picking up another choir member, so they were both late. Joyce Black, who lived across the street from the church, was ready for choir practice, but just couldn't seem to get moving.
I was just plain lazy, and I just didn't want to get out in the cold. And so I kept putting off going out the door. At last, I couldn't put it off any longer, so I put my coat on, and when I opened up the door and stepped out, our church just disintegrated.
The lights went out all over town.
Oh. What really impressed me was our sheet music and our songbooks. Flying through the air, we had a lot of those things. It was really something to see. A real nice choir book fell right near me, and it was in pretty good condition. So I picked it up. I didn't think anybody'd care, because I wanted to keep it.
Minutes after the explosion, the choir members began to arrive.
Yeah, come on! There might be some more people in there!
Frantically, they searched the rubble for survivors. Then, one by one, all of them straggled in, each of them late for his or her own reason.
When we found out that everyone was safe and that no one was in the explosion, we were standing there holding each other's hands, and one of the members said, "Let's give thanks to God," and we offered a prayer of thanksgiving that we were indeed spared and that no one lost their life.
If this had been a busload of people stopped by a flat tire or any such occurrence, it might be considered a coincidence. But where you have 12, 15 people scattered throughout the entire city, and each of them detained by some trivial little thing, it can't be.
I believe that night, and no one will convince me otherwise, that God didn't want us there. We were spared, and I'm very grateful.
It turned out the explosion was caused by a gas leak from an underground pipeline. People still debate what it was that kept each choir member safely away from the church. To some, it was just a coincidence. But to the people of Beatrice, Nebraska, it was the act of a higher power. Next, two friends take an afternoon drive. By midnight, they have disappeared without a trace. Even their car has vanished. Our next story is about two young people who simply vanished in the Great Plains of Nebraska. It was supposed to be a short trip, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Nothing at all. And yet these two young people and their car completely disappeared. Whatever happened to Bill Rundle and Tracy Kenley? On the day Bill and Tracy vanished, they paid a visit to Tracy's parents, 38 miles southeast of Hastings.
Hey, hi you guys. Hi, Mom. So
Nice to meet you.
this is Bill.
Yeah, I'm
Finally, I
Bill.
get to meet you.
This is my mom, Sharon.
We had never met Bill before this, so we don't know anything about him. But we, it's like her dad said, any friend of Tracy's is a friend of ours.
So what do you do, Bill?
We never talked about where they were going when they left or what they were going to do. I guess we felt that she'd make it home safe.
But they didn't go home. Tracy called her boyfriend Doug and made plans to meet him at a local bar at 12:30 a.m.
I'm just leaving my parents' house with Bill. What are you going to do after work?
Tracy and Bill were never heard from again.
Hey, Bill!
The following day, Bill Rundle didn't show up for work.
I was concerned if he would have not showed up for work. Absolutely not. He would have called one way or the other. He would have let somebody know that he wasn't going to be there.
Tracy!
Tracy didn't show up at her job either.
I knew it was pretty serious because Tracy, if she wasn't going to go to work, the first thing she'd do would be to call into work and let them know that she was sick or whatever. The first thing I did was just hop up and head out the door and start looking. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to think at all.
When Tracy didn't answer her phone, her parents reported her missing. Police pinpointed Tracy's location at the time of the call through cell phone records. It was a junction in the road 16 miles east of Hastings. They organized the search of the 30 square miles around the intersection. There was no sign of Bill, Tracy, or the Jeep.
A lot of dedicated individuals came out and searched for 2 solid days. Some areas were searched 2 and 3 times. I believe in a 30-mile circumference, we've done a very thorough job of searching.
Not finding anything with as many searches as we've had, you would think you'd find something. There's just nothing. Nothing.
Police began to wonder if Bill and Tracy had run off together.
At the time that he disappeared, he was really lonely. From what I know of Tracy, she was a really sweet person, and I think that Bill was probably really attracted to that as a friend, and that at that point he did need a friend. And I think maybe they needed each other.
Tracy's a very responsible person. There was no way that she would run away from her responsibilities. She was very close to her parents. She was close to me. I mean, if she didn't want to call me, if she ran off or something, the first people she would call would be her parents.
They didn't run away. I feel that in my heart because neither one of them took their toothbrush, neither one took their any change of clothing.
There's been no evidence as far as their credit cards, ATMs, phones have ever been powered up from the day they disappeared. No evidence has led us in that direction that they're still out there.
1 full week after Bill and Tracy disappeared, a strange piece of evidence turns up at the intersection where Tracy made her final phone call.
We had a farmer come to us who had recovered a hat, and the hat was sent into the lab just in case. Through lab analysis, it was found that the hat was Bill Rundle's.
So whereabout was that found? That was laying right down here.
We do not believe that Bill was wearing the hat when Bill and Tracy disappeared. There had been 3 inches of rain in 2 nights after they had disappeared, and the hat was clean and did not appear to be out in the weather. Plus, most of our search teams went directly by that area, and we believe our search teams would have seen it if it would have been there.
If Bill wasn't wearing the hat and there was no trace of it during the search, how did it get to this remote location? Police were convinced the hat was planted, but by whom and why?
Bill and Tracy knew that they didn't have to meet Doug for at least an hour. It would have been very normal for Bill to find a place to pull over, maybe pulled into a shaded area and just opened up a few beers and talked.
Another theory is foul play.
Nebraska is an area where you travel through to get from the east or the west. There's always a possibility of somebody coming through the area that may have been a more severe criminal than we're normally used to.
But how could a killer dispose of 2 bodies and a car without leaving a trace? And why would a killer plant Bill's hat 1 week later? There were no answers.
I'll never stop looking. We need some kind of clue. We have no clue. There has been nothing. It's just like they just disappeared.
Update. 2 years after Tracy Kenley and Bill Rundle vanished, drought conditions lowered the level of a pond near the road where the two had been driving. A farm worker noticed the outline of a car in the pond and contacted police. They theorized that because Tracy and Bill didn't know the area, they drove down the narrow private road by mistake. When they tried to turn around, the car went into the pond. Investigators have ruled out foul play.